Hello, welcome. In this video, we will be discussing the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula, which is this here, is x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything divided by 2a. So as you can see, before we can use a quadratic formula, we need to understand how to find the value of a, b, and c. Check the notes above here so that you can understand how to get the value of a, how to get the value of b, and how to get the value of c. Once you are able to determine the value of a, b, and c without any problem, then you will be able to use the quadratic formula without having any issue. Let's start with an example. The example says, solve 4x squared minus 8x equals minus 3. So let's solve it step by step. Step 1. We have to make sure that the equation is written in general form. What is the general form, or what do we mean by a standard form? It simply means we have to have something like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Once we have the equation in this form, then we can determine the value of a, determine the value of b, and determine the value of c correctly without having any issue. So let's go back to the example. The example says 4x squared minus 8x equals minus 3. As we can see that this equation is not in the general form, or is not in the standard form. So in order to determine the value of a, b, and c accurately and to apply the formula, we have to write the equation in the general form. So let's deal with that. So we go from there. It becomes 4x squared minus 8x. This minus 3 will bring into the left side. So when minus 3 comes to, turns to plus 3. And on the right side, we are left with 0. Now we can see that this equation looks like the general form. Now we can determine the value of a, b, and c correctly. Step 2. Now from this equation here, we can see that the value of a, coefficient of x squared. The value of a is 4. B is the coefficient of x. So the value of b is negative 8. Do not ignore the negative. If there is a negative, the negative belongs to the coefficient. So instead of writing 8, the coefficient of x here, the coefficient of x is minus 8 and not 8. This is very important. And the value of c equals 3. So because 3 here is having positive, so it is positive 3. If the sign here was negative, it will have been negative 3. But because the sign is positive, so it is positive 3. So c is 3. Next step, we apply the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula says x, the value of x equals minus b plus or minus all square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. It is important that every time you solve the question, you write out the formula, because that is the best way for you to memorize the formula. So now let's solve. X equals, we know that the value of b is minus 8. So we write the negative which comes with the formula, and the value of b in of itself is negative 8. Again, there is a negative in the formula that we have, and the value of b already has its own negative. So we don't say because the formula has negative b, we ignore the negative of b. No, the negative of b still holds. So we have negative 8, because b is negative 8, not 8. If b was 8, then we would have had minus 8. but because b is minus 8, so applying the formula correctly, we will have minus 8. Then plus or minus the square root, b square, which is negative 8 square, minus 4a, which is also 4, and the value of c is 3. So we simply substituted step 2 into the formula we are using in step 3. Divided by 2, and the value of a is 4. So x equals negative 8 will give us 8 plus or minus all square root. Negative 8 square will give us 64 minus 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 3 is 48. Divided by 2 times 4 is 8. X equals 8 plus or minus 64 minus 48 is 16. So we have square root of 16 divided by 8. So x equals 8 plus or minus square root of 16 is 4 divided by 8. In order to do the operation correctly, we need to separate the positive and the negative. So we have x1 equals 8 plus 4 divided by 8. And we have x2 equals 8 minus 4 divided by 8. So we have two real roots in this situation. So what we just did was we separated this operation of the positive and the operation of the negative and solved them individually. So x1 equals 8 plus 4 is 12 divided by 8. So that means x1, the first value of x, is equal to 12 divided by 8 will give us 3 over 2, or we can simply write it as 1.5. And x2 equals 8 minus 4, that's 4, divided by 8. So x2 equals 4 divided by 8 will give us 1 over 2, or we can simply write it as 0.5. And that's the way we apply quadratic formula. A quick recap. First, you need to understand the general form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, which is the standard form or the general form. And the quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac, all square roots, divided by 2a. To memorize the formula, you simply just need to solve enough questions. And for each question you solve, you need to write out the formula again and again, and the formula will be easy to remember. So we looked at an example, and step 1 involves making sure that the equation is in the general form or the standard form. If the equation is not in the standard form, you have to write it in the standard form, because that will help you correctly determine the value of a, b, and c, which is step 2. And step 3 simply is substituting the value of a, b, and c into the quadratic formula and simplify. When you simplify all the way to the positive and negative operation, then you can simply separate the operation and solve each operation individually. So you solve the positive and you solve the negative, and you end up with two answers depending on the situation. If the square root is 0, then you'll have only one answer. Using a quadratic formula by taking into consideration the discriminants or with the use of delta, you may check the video up here. Hope you found this video helpful. If you do, please leave it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.